Next, I'd like to discuss what I would do differently. So I talked about the schedule, or the calendar that I made. So what I would do, I thought doing those board vitals practice questions were super helpful to do at the beginning. So I liked doing that. However, I think what I would do is actually maybe take the first week, instead of going through those basic general concepts. I went over general, like what happens in acute inflammation and chronic inflammation and blah, blah, blah. That's useful. I could have shortened that down, and I would have, or taken another week, or in the quarter before in quarter 7, even though quarter 7 is super long and tiring. Or if you can do it sooner, do some review. I tutored, and I think that definitely did help me, because I tutored pretty much starting quarter 3 up through quarter 8. So I think that was useful because I was tutoring anatomy and gen med and biochem and immunology, so things were a bit fresher in my mind. So I would go back, depending on when you want to start, and just like, I would do maybe like a week, go through like each day, go through all of my all of one quarter of anatomy, then the next quarter of anatomy, then next quarter of anatomy, then first quarter of biochem, the second quarter of biochem, and just read through and skim, depending on how long it really takes. I would like to have just at least skimmed through all of my old notes, because those are your notes. You know exactly what they look like. They trigger memories in your mind. You can find things easily. Then if you have to reference them later, you can find them again easily. And I think it just would have been a good overall review and refresher of all of the systems ahead of time, instead of breaking down system by system, going here in chunks between all of these subjects. It just, for me, creates a better flow. So that's what I would have done differently. And then after that, then I would have gone system by system and pretty much done all that again. What I would also do is go at the end of each day, do some practice questions relevant to that section. So I did exam master practice questions. I didn't do those until the end, when I got like a better grasp of everything, because those questions are more challenging. But I actually ended up being able to answer a lot of them pretty well if you can filter out like the psych questions, the like ethics questions, the pharm questions, so that they're only asking you questions that are relevant to the NPLEX exam. I actually did find those helpful, and just doing so many questions helps with your endurance, and it helps make sure that you're actually remembering all of the things that you're reviewing and learning new things during that time, which is kind of like difficult, because you are learning new things and then you're like, okay, I learned this 2 days ago, but do I even remember it anymore? Because there's just, you can't hit everything. So that's what I would do. Now, I haven't mentioned exactly all the resources that I used. So I specifically used USMLE, I used PassNPLEX, exam master questions, board vital questions, and then when I took practice tests, I used the Wild Brilliance tests and the USMLE practice tests. So I did that, and then I had the questions from the TA review sessions, professor reviews, Dr. Clow's reviews. So that is the stuff I stuck with. I didn't use anything else like Sketchy Micro or Pathoma. I just used my notes and the like PowerPoints that the professors gave us. So the professors all give you review PowerPoints of all the material as well. Our immu and micro professor is really good about highlighting what's really high yield for the exam. This is so much information for NPLEX. I didn't even realize, so that's why this is so many parts. But now I'm just gonna go through my typical flow. So what I first did is I would watch the PassNPLEX lecture. I would speed it up to 2 times speed unless I needed to slow down. I would highlight everything that was important, or just color code things so they stood out and made the most sense to me. So I would do all of that. And then I would add in any extra things that the guy that on the recording said, so I'd type those in as well. Then, and I did this in OneNote, then what I did, it's a long process, but I screenshotted every single slide, because when I highlighted on OneNote, it wasn't part of the whole thing. So I screenshotted every slide and then went back and I did Anki. So I made Anki cards out of everything, and this is such a long process. But anyways, I did that. I made Anki cards out of all of it. This was day 1. I think I tried to do on day 1, day 2. And then when I was done with that, I went through USMLE and I would read through, I would type in my notes on the same like systems note that I had for the PassNPLEX material. I would type in any extra material that they had that I thought was good to know or relevant, or just anything extra that I wanted to include in there. So I did that. I made the Anki cards. Then like basically the 3rd day is when I studied the Anki cards. So I did all the Anki cards for that system on the 3rd day. And that was it pretty much for the system, depending on how many days I had. Some systems are bigger than others, some are smaller. Then for the USMLE really helps with the Dr. Clow sessions. So some exams are different than others. I know some NPLEX exams are really heavy in like biochemistry, or some are really heavy in embryology. I felt like our exam, and I've talked to some other people, it was not heavy in a certain area. It was very well evenly distributed, but I've heard like pretty much all the other exams have been more heavily weighted in some areas, or maybe that's just perception, I don't know, because they give you this specific breakdown of the subjects. So cardiovascular is 12%, so is GI, musculoskeletal is 10%, neuro is 10%, reproductive is 10%, urinary is 10% of the exam. Pulmonary, endocrine, immunology are 8%, each are 8%. Hematopoietic is 6%, and tegumentary is 6%. There were definitely some things on the exam that didn't even show up, or yeah, definitely didn't show up, because out of all of that material, to have that all on one exam, that's only really 200 questions, 200 questions, or right? 250 questions. I think before I said it was different, but I think it's 125 questions and 125. Anyways, the percentage breakdown is in the blueprint. The number of questions is in the blueprint. So yeah, just that's for your information. Lastly, I'd like to discuss my actual thoughts on the exam. So I actually found the exam to be pretty fair. It was not heavily weighted, like I mentioned, in any specific area. I didn't think the questions were particularly complex. They were pretty straightforward. People will tell you that like the answers on the page, the answers right in front of you. I thought there were a lot of questions where it's not so much, I didn't think there were a lot of really critical thinking questions. There were some where you have to know other information in order to understand others, but I thought a lot of it was pretty kind of straightforward. Some things it's just like you really don't know, and when you get those questions, you just gotta be like, well, I'm assuming no one else is gonna know this, or most people aren't gonna know this question, so it's probably gonna be thrown out. Something like that. I know they do like tester questions as well, so just keep that in mind. For me, I was expecting it to be like extremely hard, and so if you have higher expectations or like more intense expectations like that, then when you get to the exam, it's not so bad. And the Dr. Clow review sessions, those questions were definitely more complex than the NPLEX questions, so doing those more complex questions also helped make it seem like the questions on the exam were not so bad. A couple last words of advice. So Dr. Clow always likes to say that if you can eliminate one answer choice, you have a better chance of answering correct, because you're left with 3 options. If you can eliminate 2 answer choices, which I feel like most questions, pretty much all questions, I could at least get it down to 2 answer choices, then you really have a 50-50 shot of getting it right, which is a lot better. So think about that. Also, a lot of people come out of the exam feeling like they failed, or just like unsure. It could go either way, and if that's you, that is completely fine. That's normal. Kind of, if you want to think about it this way, I thought about it this way, that you should almost expect to come out feeling bad, feeling like it didn't go well. That's how I went in, because that's what everyone said, and then I came out actually feeling better about it, because I had that perception in mind that I was going to feel so bad, and then it wasn't as bad as I thought. So just like keep that in mind, as well as the exam. I thought it was going to be way more difficult, like I mentioned before, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But also, if you do fail, it's really not the end of the world. It's one exam. And the thing is, a lot of the questions, because it's so much material, it's just like, did you happen to know this condition really well, or know this aspect really well? And is that on the exam? It's a little bit just like almost luck of the draw on what's going to be on there, because there's only 50 cases or so, and it's so much information. So definitely give yourself grace. There's so many other factors that are involved with med school and just life outside of med school, and it's an overwhelming time and experience, and you don't really get a whole lot of just downtime to be able to go over all of the information. So if you can do a little bit of light reviewing ahead of time, I think that would be beneficial, though it's also not completely necessary, and you don't really need to worry about that. Just focus on your classes, focus on learning and understanding the material super well as best you can, because that will really help you in the long run. And it doesn't reflect on you as a person, it doesn't reflect on you as a future doctor. It's just an exam, and it's just something that you have to get past, and the real learning comes when you're actually in clinic, interacting with patients, doing the therapies that you're hoping to do when you get out. And you just need real life experience is the main key thing. So it doesn't mean anything about you as a person, and I just want to put that out there. And if you have to delay or you have to take it later in any way, like, it's okay. 6 months, a year, in the grand scheme of things, is not that long. And if you get that extra time to just learn the material well and focus on what you need to focus on, you're gonna know it even better than other people, because you had that extra time. You were able to go more in depth with it and hold that information in your brain and like solidify it into your long-term memory. So I think there's a lot of benefits to that. And with that, I'm going to end the video. Thank you all so much for sticking around for this NPLEX review series and listening to my experience and my advice. I'll probably put the list of resources maybe down below or on Instagram. My Instagram is liliesnatural.life, spelled like my name on this channel. So you can find me there. You can find me on Facebook as well. I also have wellness, naturopathic, holistic minded shirts and other apparel and home goods at my store, so please check those out. I'm gonna link them down below. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to comment below, or the easiest way is to message me on Instagram. So I will see you all next time.